Today, I'm going to explore what scripture, ancient wisdom, and modern neuroscience reveal about the cost of keeping our fears in the shadows. And more importantly, how breaking that silence might be the most faithful step you can take in your healing journey. Hi, I'm Maggie, and I help Christian women break the silence of unspoken fears so they can experience the authentic peace and freedom that Jesus actually promised. Not the counterfeit peace that comes from keeping up appearances, but the deep-rooted peace that flows when we bring our whole selves, including our fears, into God's presence and trusted community. What I've discovered through both my personal healing journey and in walking alongside hundreds of women is that there's a profound cost to our silent suffering. A cost that affects not just our spiritual lives, but our physical bodies, our relationships, and even our capacity to hear God's voice clearly. Have you ever smiled and said, "I'm fine" at church while your heart was breaking? Have you ever prayed fervently for others while secretly wondering why God seems silent about your own struggles? I remember sitting in my car outside my small group, unable to go in because I couldn't bear to wear the mask for one more night. For months, I'd been battling anxiety that felt like it was swallowing me whole. But I kept it hidden because good Christian women don't struggle with fear, right? We're supposed to cast all our anxieties on Him and then they just disappear. But that night, as panic closed my throat, I finally had to admit my silence wasn't making my fears go away, it was giving them power. Before we dive into the specific costs, let's understand what's actually happening in your brain and body when you keep fears unspoken. Groundbreaking research in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, the study of how our thoughts and emotions affect our physical health, has shown that unexpressed emotions don't simply disappear. They become stored in our bodies, creating what neuroscientist Dr. Bessel van der Kolk calls the body keeping the score. His research reveals that when we suppress emotions, particularly fear and anxiety, our bodies remain in a state of low-grade stress. This activates our sympathetic nervous system, our fight, flight, or freeze response, which releases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. What's fascinating is that even in biblical times, this mind-body connection was understood. Proverbs 17:22 tells us, "A cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones." The Hebrew writers recognize that our emotional state directly impacts our physical well-being. In fact, the Psalms give us a powerful template for emotional honesty. David, a man after God's own heart, never hesitated to bring his rawest emotions before God. In Psalm 55:4-5, he admits, "My heart is in anguish within me. The terrors of death have fallen on me. Fear and trembling have beset me. Horror has overwhelmed me." The ancient wisdom of Scripture aligns perfectly with what modern neuroscience is now confirming, that there is a profound cost to emotional silence. When we fail to give voice to our fears, either to God, ourselves, or trusted friends, we're not just suffering spiritually, we're setting in motion a cascade of effects that impact every dimension of our well-being. So what exactly are those costs? How do our unspoken fears manifest in ways we might not even recognize? And why does breaking the silence matter so much for our healing journey as Christian women? Let's explore the 3 hidden costs that might be silently shaping your life right now. The first hidden cost of unspoken fears is one you might be experiencing right now. Physical symptoms that medication and medical tests can't seem to resolve. Have you experienced emotional meltdowns that seem to come out of nowhere? Nights where you lie awake, your mind racing with thoughts you don't dare speak aloud? Or maybe it's unexplained fatigue, tension in your shoulders, or a constant knot in your stomach that appears during certain conversations. For years, I struggled with what I called sleep anxiety. I'd crawl into bed exhausted only to have my mind suddenly flood with every fear and worry I'd pushed aside during the day. Some nights I'd finally fall asleep from sheer exhaustion only to wake at 3:14 a.m. with my heart racing. Other nights, the emotional pressure would build until I'd have complete meltdowns, crying uncontrollably or snapping at my hubby over minor issues. What I didn't understand then was that my body was speaking what my voice wouldn't. Dr. Stephen Porges, in his research on polyvagal theory, explains that our nervous system has a breaking point. When we continually suppress our emotions and fears, our body eventually forces a release through what looks like overreactions or emotional dysregulation, but is actually a natural response to prolonged emotional suppression. This is why understanding your nervous system patterns is so essential for healing. If you're curious where you stand, there's a quick 2-minute nervous system regulation quiz in the description. You'll get your personal dysregulation score and tailored next steps for finding true peace. Your healing journey starts with awareness. We see this truth beautifully illustrated in Psalm 32, where David writes about his experience keeping silent about his sin. When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night your hand was heavy on me. My strength was sapped as in the heat of summer. Psalm 32:3-4. David wasn't describing an abstract spiritual concept here. He was experiencing physical symptoms from his emotional and spiritual silence. His sleep was disrupted day and night. His energy depleted. My strength was sapped, and his body was breaking down under the weight of what remained unspoken. This connection between unprocessed emotions and sleep disturbances isn't just anecdotal. Research published in the Journal of Sleep Research found that emotional suppression was directly linked to poorer sleep quality. Increased nighttime awakenings and greater difficulty falling asleep, exactly the patterns many Christian women experience, but attribute to simply being worried or stressed. The tragedy is that many of us are taking sleep aids, trying relaxation techniques, or blaming ourselves for these meltdowns without addressing their true source, the unspoken fears we're carrying day after day. What if your sleep struggles and emotional meltdowns aren't signs of weakness, but your body's wisdom, its way of signaling that something needs to be expressed, not suppressed? The good news is that our bodies don't just signal distress, they can also be pathways to healing. When we begin to give voice to our fears and process our emotions, sleep quality improves and emotional regulation becomes easier. As Jesus said in John 8:32, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. These 3 simple words can begin to release what your body has been working so hard to express through sleep disturbances and emotional overwhelm. The second hidden toll that unspoken fears take on our lives might surprise you. We become increasingly isolated even as we maintain or even increase our connections with others. It's a spiritual contradiction many of us live with but rarely name. Does this sound familiar? Your calendar is full of coffee dates, Bible studies, and church activities. You're constantly connecting on social media, responding to texts, and showing up for others. By all external measures, you're deeply connected. And yet, there's this growing sense of being unknown, unseen, a nagging loneliness that doesn't make sense given how connected your life appears. I remember sitting in a women's Bible study surrounded by women I'd known for years. We were discussing Paul's letter to the Philippians about rejoicing in the Lord always. As everyone shared how they were finding joy despite minor inconveniences, I sat there with a smile plastered on my face, nodding along, while inside I was drowning in doubt about whether God even cared about my struggles. I was physically present but emotionally absent, connected yet profoundly isolated. In Brené Brown's research, she found that people who maintain what she calls the armor of perfectionism experience significantly higher rates of loneliness, even when surrounded by community. For Christian women especially, this armor often takes the form of spiritual perfectionism, hiding our fears behind acceptable prayer requests, sharing only the resolved testimonies rather than the messy middles, and keeping our deepest questions about faith locked away where they can't disturb others. The third hidden cost of unspoken fears strikes at something precious to every Christian woman: your ability to discern God's voice and make clear decisions aligned with His will. Have you ever found yourself overthinking even simple decisions? Constantly second-guessing what God is saying to you, feeling paralyzed when faced with choices because you can't seem to hear clearly anymore? When fears remain unexpressed and unprocessed, they activate our amygdala, the brain's alarm system, keeping us in a constant state of low-grade threat response. In this state, blood flow is actually directed away from our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for discernment, wisdom, and clear decision making, and toward our limbic system, which is designed for survival, not discernment. James 1:5-8 speaks directly to this experience. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. This passage isn't suggesting that doubt itself is sinful. Rather, it's describing the exact state created by unprocessed fears, a mind divided against itself, unstable and unable to receive clearly. This diminished discernment shows up in multiple ways. You read the same scripture repeatedly, unable to sense its application for your life. Prayer feels like talking into an echo chamber rather than a conversation. You seek multiple opinions for decisions that once seemed straightforward. You feel suspicious of steps forward that require faith because you can't distinguish between discernment and fear. When we articulate our emotions, particularly fear, we actually help our brains integrate these feelings rather than being hijacked by them. We need to name it to tame it. When we find courage to bring these fears into the light, our ability to hear God's voice and make decisions with confidence gradually returned. If you're wondering just how much these unspoken fears might be affecting your nervous system right now, there is a 2-minute free nervous system regulation quiz you can take. Just click the link below to discover your regulation score and receive personalized next steps. Your body is trying to tell you something. It's time to listen. Thank you for watching. If this video helped unearth something you've been carrying, please hit like and subscribe. And share this with a friend. Remember, healing happens in layers, not all at once. And if you've been resonating with what we've discussed today, I want you to know these unspoken fears often stem from that deeper wound many of us carry, the belief that we're simply not enough. So how do you win from that? Check out this video, because if you combined what you've just learned with this, it would be 10 times more powerful. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.